Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry that I could not join you in person. Let me first congratulate the organizers, the MIT group, for conceiving this gigantic event for the first time in the country, where so many legislators from across the country, from across the party lines, have assembled together to strengthen the future of India's democracy. Uh, I've been involved in planning this event with Rahul for some time. Rahul was kind enough to invite me for a couple of meetings, and I had given some of my ideas. This was, of course, I couldn't be here today because I had to be uh, away from Bombay for a party meeting. Uh, as the legislators from across the country are joined here today in a massive gathering for the first time ever in our country, and perhaps I don't think anywhere else in the developing world such a gathering has ever been uh, put together. I think I must compliment the organizers and Mr. Vishwanath Karad, Rahul Karad, and the entire MIT team, and others who have these senior leaders from the country, the former speakers of the Lok Sabha, who have been kind enough to grace the occasion. The challenges before all of you is how we develop India into a developed country in near future. The dream that our Prime Minister has for India to make India a developed country by uh, 2047, when we celebrate 100 years of our independence. There are challenges. Uh, Saying that we'll become a developed country is one thing, but trying to develop the country, go into a trajectory of fast economic growth, and also the serve the cause of equity is not very easy. Of course, we all would like India to become prosperous, wealthy, and remove the endemic poverty, the lack of education, the ill health, and all that as soon as possible. But bigger challenge, I think, before us today is how India remains a liberal democracy, a democratic republic that our founding fathers conceived us to be. As we develop, there are challenges, and challenges would be there. Different states could pull in different directions. But the idea of India that was conceived by the founding fathers when uh, we founded the republic, when we wrote our constitution, that India should not be allowed to slip out of our hands. The liberal democracy that we conceived, a secular democracy that we conceived, must be strengthened, because that alone will ensure that India becomes a prosperous country, a developed country in near future. If you lose that dream, if you lose that ideal, then I think mere economic growth rate without equity, without justice, without brotherhood, and without true liberty will be meaningless. We have in the past slipped a little as far as our freedoms are concerned, whether it is a media freedom, whether it's a democratic index. And I think some people argue that it's bound to happen as we develop, but I don't agree. I think we must, while we develop, we must preserve our democratic republic, our secular democracy, freewheeling democracy with its uh, problems and all. But we cannot, in order to achieve faster development, give up this ideal of a democratic republic. There are countries, there are examples in the world where a more authoritarian regimes have developed faster. And we are given examples of East Asian countries, we're given example of China and some other countries. But I would never, never sacrifice the idea of India that was conceived when our republic was founded. But the dream of being a developed country in a short time is something to be cherished, and I definitely cherish it. You have before you a large agenda. One of the immediate challenges which legislators face today is what to do with the anti-defection law. The anti-defection law, as it was conceived in 1985 by late Rajiv Gandhi, with the particular events happening around us. That served us to some extent. It had faults, and then there was a major overhaul of the anti-defection law in 2003. And we have today the law as it stands, which was amended in 2003. Apparently, that law has not worked. We have seen examples in many state legislatures where there have been rampant defection. Governments have been brought down, new governments have been created. And I think I'll urge you to really introspect and discuss whether there is a need, and as I believe, there's a need to scrap the current version of the anti-defection law and enact something more, which will really not allow defection to happen. There are many suggestions which have been made. I think this is one thing which I think I'll strongly urge that you discuss in the your next deliberations for next 2 days. Another thing I would really uh, ask you to ponder is the constitution framers considered a separation of powers between the three arms of the government, the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. But we don't seem to be anywhere near that ideal. I think the parliament moment it elects the leader of the largest party, and that leader becomes the prime minister, and he has a cabinet at his disposal and a huge bureaucracy to govern. That executive becomes all powerful, and Parliament virtually commits a harakiri. Parliament cannot uh, legislate itself. Parliament has no role in budget making at all. Parliament cannot disagree with the ruling party whip if they have a different view, or if the electors who are elected them have a different view. They cannot do it. They become really slaves to the whip. This is exactly what was talked of by late Madhu Limaye when the original anti-defection law was being enacted. And he said, please don't do it. The legislatures across the world, very few of them have a law like ours. United States doesn't have it. England doesn't have it. I think we need to really recorrect the separation of powers and uh, empower the legislature a little more. And one thing to do that will be to eliminate the anti-defection law entirely, so legislatures can act on their own in all matters. In United States, we know that even the appointment of Supreme Court justices is at the behest of the Congress. The budget is framed by the Congress. New laws are framed by the Congress, and the president is just given a de facto budget or de facto legislation to work on. I mean, we may not be able to go to that extent today, but I think I'll strongly urge you to consider whether, in today's scenario, legislatures have any role as was conceived when American Constitution was being drafted. The principle of separation of powers between the three wings of the government, I think is not working in India today. The executive has become all too powerful. I mean, even the judiciary has limited role, but because the appointments ultimately have to be vetted, but particularly how the legislature gets back the power, its teeth, so that the what was conceived in the constitution when it was framed, the three arms of the government should balance each other. There should be checks and balances. It is not happening today. The executives become all too powerful, whether in states or at the central level. I think these two themes, which are partly interrelated, uh, should be, I think, would be my priority. Of course, how do you make sure that the legislators are given enough secretarial assistance, how they can really work on research? There are issues about constituency development. I mean, the organizers have conceived many verticals where you can discuss and enrich yourself. Of course, the most important thing today will be you'll be meeting across your colleagues and friends from all over the country. Many of you probably have not been to Mumbai. Enjoy Mumbai. I'm sorry I'm not there personally to welcome you, but I think one of my earnest requests before I conclude is that this should become an annual event. Maybe some other state would take up the sponsorship of the event next year, with, of course, the secretarial assistance provided by the MIT group. But let us make this into an annual event, and let us carry fond memories of your visit, your conference, and let's get something tangible out of this. Thank you. I wish the deliberations all the best. Thank you again.